Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa, but subscribers can call me Missy. In today's video, I am going to be working on and finally finishing a drawing that I started over a year ago, but it's part of a series that started a lot longer ago than that. In this video, I'm also going to be talking about Renaissance artist Leonardo da Vinci. I did this drawing behind me while I was in college. Stylistically, I hope that it's pretty apparent that it is inspired by Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks. One of my ideas was to draw the human figure, but to make some of the body parts look like they had morphed into plant parts. Years after this initial drawing, I revisited the concept. I realized that I didn't know anything about how plants work. So I set out to learn more about them by making an art series that incorporated human figures, plants, and notes. I am no historian, but I do have a couple of books and internet access. So let's dive in. Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15th, 1452 at 10:30 p.m. That was 570 some odd years ago. So how do we know this? His grandfather, Antonio da Vinci, wrote it down in a notebook alongside the births of his own children. I had known that Leonardo da Vinci was a so-called bastard child, being born to unwed parents. However, I would have thought, based on probably the way historic dramas and fiction seem to treat the subject, that his birth would have been buried, too embarrassing to be written in books alongside legitimate children. So contrary to my admitted assumptions here, it seems like Leonardo's birth was actually met with quite a bit of fanfare. His baptism, the day after his birth, was attended by 10 godparents, the average for the time period being 2 to 4. His father's family were notaries who would have done business in the city and supplemented their income with their country farms in and around Vinci. Not quite upper class, but well educated and respected for their profession. Because a lot of what we know about history comes from historical documents, such as property exchange, we don't get much information about women of the past because women were not property holders at that time. So we really don't have much information about Leonardo's mother, Caterina. For example, it's unclear what her status was within the social hierarchy. Some people say that she was a lowly peasant, and others say that she was of good blood, which could just mean that her family was well respected, or it could mean they were wealthy. We also know very little about what her relationship with Leonardo's father was like. Was it a single night of passion, or was it a long-term romance? As an adult, however, Leonardo iterated a common thought of his day in his notebooks. The man who has intercourse aggressively and uneasily will produce children who are irritable and untrustworthy. But if the intercourse is done with great love and desire on both sides, then the child will be of great intellect and witty, lively and lovable. It's unknown how much we get to read into this. Was this as an assessment of the folk tradition based on his impressions of his parents' relationship, or just a jab at his half-brother with whom he was engaged in a legal dispute around the time that he wrote this? Whatever the case may be, Leonardo seems to have spent most of his childhood in the country with his mother and stepfather, who were humble farmers. His biological father seems to have paid him enough attention, however, to recognize that Leonardo had artistic proclivities and thus got him an apprenticeship in Florence. So the youth set off on a new chapter in his life. I do have to pause for a moment here and apologize for this next segment. My brain would not let me rest until I created this, but my abilities are lacking. Anyway, it took too long for me to leave it out of the video, so I can only hope it is entertaining at most, and at least you may enjoy some Schadenfreude.
He walketh through a throng, Vinci was his home. Beggars on the street, cobbles under cars. Renaissance of thought, hast thou read Plato? The church has just a mission, good Verrocchio. Da Vinci, welcome to Florence. See it waited for thee, welcome to Florence. Welcome to Florence. Welcome to Florence. See it waited for thee, welcome to Florence. Welcome to Florence. It's a new challenge, thou canst stand on my feet. Feet forevermore, that mantle so fine, thou shouldst buy one for thee. Thee. Welcome to Florence. See it waited for thee, welcome to Florence. Welcome to Florence. Welcome to Florence. See it waited for thee, welcome to Florence. Welcome to Florence.
Now that I've thoroughly embarrassed myself, the video may commence. Leonardo did not attend universities, but he was, as I said before, apprenticed to Andrea del Verrocchio in Florence. Early biographies of Leonardo painted him as, with many historic male artists, a young genius or a child savant. Whatever natural ability or intellect he may have had, his training in his apprenticeship would have supplied him with tools to help him learn methods for creating art of a consistent quality and methods for observation and quantification of the natural world. Apprenticeships of the time combined knowledge of geometry and philosophy, for example, with technical skill to help artists contribute to the cultural boom of the Renaissance. Even so, Leonardo's world was still full of the spiritual or magical explanations for how the world works. There is a tension in his notes and thinking between these magical explanations of the world and a desire to understand the world under a context of a more naturalistic explanation. In any case, there are a number of whimsical stories told by and around Leonardo that suggest his analytical mind was also rather playful and creative. One such story involves a shield his father asked him to paint while he was still in the midst of his apprenticeship. He was asked to paint something that would scare enemies while the shield might be in use. He invented some kind of monster, perhaps a dragon. Presumably, when the shield was ready, he invited his father into a dim room where the shield was displayed, and it gave his father quite a fright. The story not only shows Leonardo's creative whimsy, but it also serves to prop up the vision of a born genius with enough skill to pull off this little prank. Another anecdote is of Leonardo finding a lizard and dressing it up like a dragon with wings and horns. Presumably this would have happened when he was in his 60s. So imagine an old man dressing up a little lizard in a little costume and then showing it to his friends as a kind of spooky curiosity. I just think that story is adorable, whether it's true or not. When I started my series of plant peoples that you see me working on here, I am combining a curiosity for the world with an interest in art, and Leonardo definitely did the same. In the late 1480s, when Leonardo was in his mid to late 30s, he began to make sketches with accompanying notes about anatomy. Of course, as an artist, anatomy is important in understanding how to accurately depict the human form. Leonardo took it a bit further, however. His work with anatomy and ultimately with dissection led to some of the most accurate depictions and drawings of the body's inner workings of his time. Quote, Leonardo is considered to be the very first in history to correctly depict the human fetus in its proper position within the womb. He was also the first to expertly draw the uterine artery and the vascular system in the cervix and vagina. And if I may further compare my art to his, he also seemed to find similarities between plant and human anatomy, which may have influenced how he portrayed said anatomy in his sketches. Quote, Leonardo also makes drawings of flower-like projections called cotyledons within his drawings of the womb, which are found in a cow uterus, but not in humans. His depictions of the curled-up fetus in the womb seem analogous to the seed that grows and becomes ready to unfold and blossom, end quote. The previous quote was an outsider making the connection between plants and Leonardo's drawings. However, Leonardo himself also made connections in his own writing and the way that he describes things. Here are a series of quotes from his notebooks to illustrate my point. The heart is the nut which produces the tree of the veins. And this network of veins acts in man as in oranges, in which the peel becomes thicker and the pulp diminishes the more they become old. The mother nourishes and gives life, and so it will continue for such time as the said umbilical cord is joined to it by the secundines and the cotyledons by which the child is attached to the mother. The navel is the point of junction of the offspring and the sheath which clothes it. It spreads out branches and is attached to the matrix as a button is to a buttonhole, a briar to a briar, or a burr to a burr. All seeds have the umbilical cord, which breaks when the seed is ripe, and in like manner they have matrix and secundina, as is seen in herbs and in all seeds which grow in pods. And with that quotation, I am ready to show you the fruit of my labors. The drawing's all done. As I said at the beginning of this video, I started it over a year ago, so it feels really nice to finally have it actually finished. If you enjoyed any part of that video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to see more of what I do art, I do sewing, I do home improvement projects, and some silliness. Anyways, if you'd like to see any of those, please go ahead and subscribe, and then I can see you in the next one. Bye! Ooh, she looking good. What else do I do?